Hey there, it's Kevin with the Rogue Deck Builder here with this week's episode of the Market Monday. It's been a while since I've done a market video, and I wanted to have a real clean and edited version for the Market Monday. However, it's already approaching 11 o'clock, and I have not done a video in a long time. Most of it due to we have a lot of projects here at the store with the remodel. Excuses, I know. I need to get back to the swing of things of actually getting these videos out on a timely manner. So, I'm going to give you a video today, and I'm just going to talk about some of my thoughts with the market. We are in a very weird time for Magic the Gathering finance, as well as collectible card games in general. And let's just first off with me making a statement that I don't think we are in as bearish of a market that I expected, or that a lot of us are just going from a hot market, the whole free money market where Magic the Gathering just and everything grew leaps and bounds, and it's all come back down to earth. And I think that everyone gets in that mindset like, wow, it must be falling. It must be, failing because this is how things were just skyrocketing in value. Well, I actually remember the financial world as far as the market is concerned for collectible card games, and we were pretty satisfied with 20% returns, or just like a few 10 cent, 15 cent raises in some of these commons and uncommons, or just good sales data. And then the whole world went crazy. The collectible markets went crazy. And I think a lot of us got in the pattern that that's the new norm, that things can double up or triple up, no problem. Well, we have a big shot of reality that that is not how these things work. In fact, I think we would see a lot better financial growth if the main boogeyman to this entire equation here would actually get themselves under control and also realize that we are in a post-pandemic world to where the collectibles market or the trading card market of Magic the Gathering is not going to be able to support that sort of printing that we saw the demand wanted during those lockdown and free money era. So the buck really stops with Magic the Gathering. So that's kind of the good and bad news with Wizards of the Coast. The buck stops with Wizards of the Coast is what I'm trying to say. The good and bad news is we are in a decent market as far as sales data is going. We have some very strong sales with Brothers War and New Phyrexia, with things like the complete bundles, the Warhammer decks. We've had some really good products come out in the past few years or few months, whatever, last quarter, at least last couple quarters. However, Wizards of the Coast continues to fail to see that they are overprinting the rest of the products. And their sales data are not nearly as strong as what I think they could be, because I think we're starting to see a lot of wallet fatigue, or just a lot of people just are passing on buying things because, it's just going to be something better is going to come down the line. Wizards has conditioned everyone to actually not pull the trigger or not get excited on new products because of the anticipation that something better could come in. I'm really going to showcase a product. The product that I'm really thinking that was the start of this was Commander Collection Black. Commander Collection Black was not a bad product. I think that people bought into it and they're like, okay, it's going to be great. This over time is going to, people are going to want this, or this is going to be a good buy. And then they started just shoving out these products that were just better and better and better and better. Things like I mentioned, the Warhammer decks, the complete version of the bundles. And it's now conditioned the player base to kind of wait until the dust settles, until it's clear that this is the best product before they're actually purchasing those products. So instead of all Magic the Gathering products being basically winners, or at least have enough hype to support them, we are now in a market era where there is huge winners and losers. And when I say losers, there are some losers in Magic the Gathering products, and I have never seen such like the discrepancy between a winner product and a loser product. Magic the Gathering's had some loser products in the scope of everything being average, but I've never seen just this massive swing. And also, the loser products they're putting out now are actually not bad. When I'm talking about loser products, I remember when they used to release event decks, or some of these Sorin versus Tybalt, and those were big head scratchers when they released them. What's that? The one that was released in China, the dual deck. It just had particularly bad cards in there. They wanted to make sure that none of these cards would ever see play, so they just created bad cards. That's what I really talk about, loser products and stinker products. I'm not talking about New Capenna being a bad product, or Kamigawa Draft Boosters being a bad product, or Baldur's Gate Collectors being a bad product. There was, of course, some definitely swings and misses with how they could have marketed Baldur's Gate, how they could have put a couple of better reprints, and that would have calmed everyone. And the price point, of course, they got very greedy with the way they did collector's packs and or just all the drafts and the sets having less packs in them, all that stuff. I'm all ears for the reasons why Baldur's Gate failed in that aspect. But Baldur's Gate, in my opinion, was actually not a stinker set, was not a loser set, the way that the market has, or at least other people have talked about it. I think it has just been overshadowed by these other products they've really, really pushed. Anyway, that is a huge introduction to this video of what I want to be talking about with Magic the Gathering. And I've been a little bit silent on the kind of the investment of Magic. I still think it's very easy to flip cards. There's still a lot of market movement when you look at like Pioneer has had some good showings, especially with the Pro Tour coming back. Commander is still staying strong. However, I think we're still under the problem with the Commander market is there's too much being printed into the Commander market and not a demand to actually outstretch that supply. That Magic the Gathering is just, or Wizards of the Coast is just burying the player base in cards that no one can buy just because there's too many out there. And as I mentioned before, I think there's this massive wallet fatigue of people that used to buy one of every Commander deck, and they'd, oh, I'm going to buy this Evolution Sage. I've got this pulled up here. I'm going to talk about why I've got this pulled up in a second. And now they're just actually passing on it. And I think that also we are just very, like I said, oversaturated. People have a lot of these cards, and there isn't that new influx of, we had that one massive influx, and now it's more like a trickle of new players rather than a flood of new players. And Wizards of the Coast is not adjusted, and they're still flooding rather than trickling in these products for the demand to outstretch the supply. So it's bad news for that, for a lot of the Commander staples to sort of investing or flipping. There used to be this really wonderful thing about Commander when they released it once per year, that you could invest in Soul Rings, and they double up by the time they reprint them. And it was just a nice little cycle of things like post-rotation standard you could always get in on. And that's why I used to do a lot of this market content. However, for this particular video, I'm going to talk about where Magic has failed and how they could be a lot more successful. I mean, it really depends on what situation you're in. I guess if you're a new player and you see these cheap prices of products out there, it's a nice way to get in. But unfortunately, a lot of the singles too are quite expensive right now because people aren't buying sealed product and opening it and drafting. And it's pretty crazy with standard actually being quite expensive with some of the rares and the uncommons. Whereas if we had like a hotter market of people actually focusing on the standard market, the draft alone would add enough supply for competitive players to get those type of pieces. And it's really seemed like it's been flipped on its head. The things that used to be the tried, tested, and true things about Magic of cards that are seeing play in like Modern or Commander are always going to go up, or always going to be in demand. And things like now that like Standard actually has, or Standard cards being the best time to buy during the height of their draft season. I mean, all these things are weird, but when you see like $70 Shieldreds, you see uncommons that are still being opened up in draft boosters being, $2 to $3. Very, very weird time for Magic the Gathering. All right, so anyway, let's talk about some other things where I am talking about how the market is actually quite good. Sales data are actually pretty strong. I've got Evolution Sage pulled up here because you can see that the sales data per day is still pretty good. It's still being bought at a high number. There are, of course, many versions of this. If you actually look at all the versions, there are plenty of versions of this. So there's hundreds of Evolutionary Sages on TCG Player probably sold per day if you add all the, not per day, or per week. There are, hundreds being stretched out of it. There isn't any new supply really coming in except for this latest one being printed in the Fraction All We Won. It has had a lot of printings, though, in the past few sets with like Streets of New Capenna. It just shows to me that, again, Wizards of the Coast is just oversaturating the product, and they need to allow time for even cards like this to actually be desired enough that they actually put them back in to the Commander products to get people excited to actually buy them. And I think that it's a very fine line with Wizards of the Coast has to walk with where they actually respect their utility of their cards, or respect the ability for people to actually get them. Like, they want this in a deck, so therefore they're going to print a deck, and they have to also respect the secondary market. Is it going to be worth it? Are people going to feel like they made a good purchase if they actually purchase this product, and not just get actually kicked in the nuts 2-3 weeks down the road when everything just completely crashes, and then they feel like it's a horrible buy and blah blah blah. So anyway, that's the kind of fine line you have to walk. In my opinion, Wizards of the Coast has not done a good job. Now, who has done a good job? Pokemon. Pokemon is through the roof. I know I don't talk much about Pokemon, but Pokemon and Flesh and Blood are absolutely killing it. Now, Flesh and Blood, I'm going to touch on just briefly. I do think that we're in a speculative bubble again with Flesh and Blood, which just makes me absolutely bang my head against the wall, because Flesh and Blood was starting to see some actual just organic growth where it was actually real demand that was outstretching real supply and not speculative demand and speculative supply being dumped on. And it does seem to be that people saw the demand start to outstretch the supply and prices go up, 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 and now we're starting to see some speculative nonsense once again in the Flesh and Blood. Now, I'll look at some prices to kind of back that up. However, Flesh and Blood made the right decision to stop all reprints, to let the market cool down, or let the market warm back up and outstretch some of the supply before they start even thinking about doing more and more reprints. I know there's a History Pack Volume 2 that has been announced that will bring back in reprints. I don't know why I have Magic pulled up. I probably should be looking at some Flesh and Blood here while talking about it. But it is just night and day what the Legendary Studios has done with allowing everything to cool off, allowing the market to settle, allowing for real organic growth to happen again, and they saved their game for doing so. So kudos to them. And now we're actually seeing a product that is doing quite well. It's doing well for stores because stores can actually make a decent profit margin on it. There isn't anything being dumped and fire sold like there was at one point, and we're actually into a nice little healthy ecosystem between buyers and sellers for Flesh and Blood. But the thing that has just absolutely been crushing it is Pokemon. Now, since I've been doing Pokemon, I must say that I haven't been the most avid follower of Pokemon market. I know that since I've been doing it in the store, though, it's always confused me. Well, Magic, I would say, is probably pretty much one-for-one collector and player. There are people that do, or most players in Magic the Gathering, both collectors and players. There are very few people that just actually collect Magic cards that just come in and oh, I don't play Magic, but I collect. Typically, it's a little bit of both, where some people will want to foil out or bling out their Atraxa decks, like I showed up here. They want their pet modern deck or those type of things, or maybe they have a casual deck that they want to bling out. That's kind of the collector aspect of Magic card. But usually Magic has been massively on the utility side. And when I talk about utility is cards that are actually seeing play in decks. So the vast majority of players that actually do purchase, or people that purchase Magic cards, are purchasing them for utility. They want to play with the cards. Pokemon was the exact opposite. It used to always confuse me, coming from a Magic player, to see some of these cards that were absolute garbage. Saw zero play in any sort of competitive play. Evolving Skies is one that comes to mind. There are a lot of cards out of Evolving Skies. Maybe I should pull Evolving Skies up here. Evolving Skies. Maybe this will pull it up here with Evolving Skies. If we go to high to low, now that I am a Pokemon player, I can kind of tell you this. Yeah, like this Umbreon. Umbreon sees absolutely no play. It's not a bad card, but if you actually look at tournament data, it sees no play whatsoever. And this is actually a good sign now that I'm actually looking at this too with these Umbreons going up. The whole thing with Umbreon is pure collectible. It's people that want this cards because it's a very popular Pokemon in the Pokemon fandom. And I noticed that with a lot of cards. And then you'd see something that saw a ton of play in tournament play, and it'd be worth absolutely nothing. And it always made me scratch my head, and that was the type of market that I didn't want to be in. Is I always try to choose games that have utility, 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 utility. I hate collectability. It is volatile as all volatile gets. It is something that I've never, even in Magic the Gathering, I haven't really dipped my toes in a lot of the reserve list stuff or any of the high-end stuff, because collectability is fickle. It's incredibly fickle of what people think is collectible and what people think is not collectible. Now, of course, Pokemon does have this rarity. They're in certain sets. They have what's called pull rates, when sometimes it's harder to get these ultra secret super duper cards, and in other sets it's a little bit easier, and that affects the price. And that's one of the reasons why Evolving Skies is so expensive, is it's very, very tough to get these cards, and therefore people have to open more packs and whatnot. And that's why the packs increase in price, because there are more and more people that are just trying to catch them all to get that particular card. So anyway, I've always turned my attention away from Pokemon back into Magic, because I hate collectible markets. I like utility markets. Well, lo and behold, Pokemon is crushing it with player attendance and people actually playing the game. It's in a good place right now. I've started to play a little bit of Pokemon because there was a lot of people in my area that wanted to start playing Pokemon. And I've noticed not just the collectible cards like we saw just barely with the Umbreon going up, up and away, but it is for the first time in a long time, in my recent memory with Pokemon, we are seeing movement in tournament cards, in utility, in playable cards. So I'm just kind of showing some of these right here because these are not are uncommon whatsoever, rare whatsoever. It calls it uncommon, but these battle pass are these trainers. If you're not familiar with Pokemon, they are usually in every pre-constructed deck. So you got to think of like how they do commander decks for Magic the Gathering, or like dual decks or challenger decks. These type of trainers are very easy to get in those particular things, and they're just uncommons in packs to begin with. So tons of these things get open. Well, look at the sales data. Look at the sales data for this card. So I'm pulling up this card right now because it's a 4 of in one of the breakout decks for this new rotation. So what happened with Pokemon is it just had a rotation where Scarlet and Violet came in and it rotated out the cards from half of Sword and Shield rotated out. And therefore, a whole new meta was born with the post-rotation for Standard. And there was a deck that required 4 Battle Pass VIPs. And as you can see, they've gone from selling a couple months ago for a quarter piece. People, uncommons, a lot of times people just put in thousands. There were sellers with thousands of these up for 25 cents a piece. And now if we actually look at the sales data, they've been selling for, I've been watching this one closely. I should have speculated on these suckers, even though it's a little bit hard to. I don't know the market. I don't know like a Card Kingdom that can just buy list them out, as well as that's the one thing about Magic too that I always loved about Magic, is it was so liquid comparative to other hobbies. If I needed to actually get out at a fair price, it was very easy to sell bulk lots. It's very easy to go to Card Kingdom and just get buy list price, which actually wasn't too terrible at that point. I don't know about Pokemon if there's anything like that, but this has just been crazy, the amounts of sales. Like, this is hundreds upon hundreds per day of this card that are being sold. Find me a card like this in Magic the Gathering that has this much. We've seen markets like this in Magic, but yeah, there's nothing like this, as you can see just throughout the past few days, of hundreds being sold on TCG Player. And it's not this particular card. There's other basic cards that are extremely common, like this one that's in the #1 deck here. It is called a rare, but it came in a lot of the pre-release packs. And same thing, these suckers are just being sold hundreds per day for Pokemon. And I think this is just indicative of a company that's done things right. They listened to the market. They knew that there was oversaturation in the market. They knew that their tournament scene was a little bit, there's just a lot left for people wanting. They've just doubled, tripled, quadrupled down in actually representation on that competitive level. They wanted to go from just being a collectible card game, basically, like people just collecting the cards, say, hey, these cards have utility. We are actually going to support it. The amount of organization that Pokemon has done within the past few months to try to get stores involved, to try to get regionals and nationals and things like that going, has just been night and day from Wizard of the Coast. So this was a company that arguably is as much of I don't know which one actually came out on the sales. I think the Magic the Gathering did outdo Pokemon, but Pokemon also did go through the roof during the whole pandemic free money era as well. People, the whole Logan Paul, all the celebrities get into it. It's very tough for me to actually know which one made out better, Magic or Pokemon. But when Pokemon started to falter, man, oh man, did they pivot? Did they do the right things? Did they say, okay, we can't rely on these breaks, these people being entertained by having, these YouTubers, these celebrities keep doing these, mass box openings to try to find these ultra secret rares, or rely on Logan Paul trying to open up $40,000 Charizards. We have got to do something before, our market share collapses. And what they did was just outstanding. How they pivoted from going to this, like, again, hype train, like this collectible thing, to then go into a thing that now has demanded utility is just absolutely amazing. And I kudos to Pokemon for doing so. And it's really a kind of a cool time period for me, as I've always loved this whole kind of theory crafting with I hate the use speculation because people always take it the wrong way. With short-term investing in utility is what I used to love to do with Magic the Gathering. So I'd always look at deck lists that were performing well and then buy into those cards before, the masses got into that deck. So right now in Pioneer, for example, the Atraxa deck was putting up good numbers. Then you could go and, okay, maybe we should buy out all these Neoforms and other cards like that. That's what I typically did on the Rogue Market channel. And I just fell away from doing it because Magic the Gathering decided they wanted to go the opposite direction when they created the collector's pack. That they wanted to go into, hey, let's try to get celebrities to open up these, super duper ultra shiny things that we're not going to make special anymore. And it worked for a while. And I think that now we're seeing that being turned on its head, and we're seeing these two games, these two polar opposite games, switch their focus on like they're both taking each other's business models of what made them successful and reverting them. And it's quite crazy, because it is nice, though. It's a breath of fresh air to see that Pokemon is doing so well with taking kind of Wizards of the Coast strategy with their tournament scene and really organization at the local game store of really trying to get people to play their game and initiate all these formats and stuff that are exciting and intuitive and getting people to the local game store to compete locally, and then get them in regionals, and then get them into nationals and whatnot. So I hope that Wizards of the Coast can take a page from it, because the sales data do not lie. And again, we are under this quote-unquote bear market. We are seeing definitely Pokemon collapsed. It had a massive collapse, and that's why they did their hiatus of reprints, why they decided, okay, we're not going to add any more elite trainers or booster boxes. We're going to let the market start back to warm back up before we do that sort of stuff. And wow, oh wow, it didn't hurt their, I think that Wizards of the Coast is just terrified. They slow down right now. It just shows the shareholders that we're having a recession here, and then it's going to cause a domino effect, and everyone's going to pull out, and blah 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 blah, and we're having a complete. I think that Wizards of the Coast is they continue to full speed ahead. Put their foot on the gas and just, okay, we're going to ride this as long as possible. Just keep pushing that envelope, and it's a bad strategy in my opinion. And I'm actually surprised it's worked out as good as it's done for Wizards of the Coast, for Magic the Gathering, because like I said, they still have great sales data, but they have killed some strategic partner. I don't want to know how much they've wasted in actually storage fees and shipping fees with all of these things that they overprinted. So yeah, they make a ton of money on some of the ones that do great, like Warhammer did exceptionally well, like I said, the Phyrexian complete bundles. But when you're seeing Amazon dump Kamigawa draft boosters, Kamigawa, one of the most beloved sets in recent years, with $30 rares, when they blow them out for $65 draft boosters on Amazon, and you see right now with the Crimson Vow dumps and the new Capenna, these were not bad sets. These are things that still could be selling if there was still utility, if there was still these clear pathway of people playing at their local store and then going to nationals, regionals, if there were still people actually building decks. Okay, I mean, if I were to compare a card like Comfy that's in like the number one deck, what would I think is a number one played competitive card right now? And I know this is going to be overprinted, but Comfy was too. This is the kind of one-for-one comparison is this, in the scope of thing, this particular card is not very rare. It had printings in a lot of the build and battles as promos. It's not that rare of a card. So I'm going to actually compare it to an uncommon, and I'm going to look up Blood Tithe Harvester, because I can't think of a card that's seeing more play in like Standard and in Pioneer. And the sales data is pretty good, but that's really it. That's really it. And you can say, okay, well, Magic players have bought a lot of stuff. It's in Challenger decks. It's just available. There won't be a need for TCG player. I can say the exact same thing about Battle Pass VIP. I can say the exact same thing about Comfy. It's very readily available in everyone's collections. Everyone that's been playing Pokemon has plenty of Battle Pass VIP if they have been just dipping their toes and slightly collecting, just trying to pull a shiny every now and again when they buy packs. They're going to have these. So how does that explain the amount of sales data that is being sold for this particular uncommon? And the only explanation, especially when I see a bunch of these 4-ofs, the only explanation is Pokemon has absolutely crushed it by getting people to start playing their game again. And that is just incredible. It's amazing. Whatever other adjective can I use here to express my surprise of how Pokemon has able to do a complete turnaround, and how they've been able to go from collectability to utility basically just with one rotation. And so I implore Magic the Gathering to go back to its roots to try to do that again. And really, one thing that Pokemon also has done is like I said, they had that hiatus of really trying to print these they started getting to the extravagant. They started to do like the Champions Pass and the Shining Fates, and releasing multiple sets per year of these ultra premium products. And they've slowed down and they focus back on utility. And I'm hoping Magic the Gathering can do that. And again, just go and compare some of these. If someone can through that, that's why I was picking up this evolution stage 2, because it is one of the most required cards for a lot of these proliferate decks in Commander. And you can see kind of the dismal, there's multiple versions of evolution stage, but even if you add them together, it'd be dismal compared to what Pokemon's doing with cards like Battle Pass VIP. And you can go into like expensive cards too. Like I pulled this Forest Seal Stone. This is typically like a 1 of in certain Pokemon decks. Some of them do run a 2 of. And you can also look at just the market price. And again, this is a more pricey card. There's a full page here before I had to go load more sales of this, $7 card being sold a day. These are people wanting these suckers for decks that are going in them, and just the energy of it is absolutely crazy. So I guess that's kind of the point of this market video, is it's not like, it definitely isn't doom and gloom with Magic. We are just in, what is it, a lull? How do I want to describe Magic the Gathering? Everyone's kind of complacent. No one's really getting excited about new products. They dabble here and there. They might buy a card if they need it for a deck, but no one is having this sort of zeal. And I kind of miss that, because we've definitely had some eras in Magic the Gathering where everyone was building multiple decks. You didn't have one Pioneer deck, you built them all. You didn't build one Standard deck, you drafted, you played Commander, you showed up to every event. That is the era that I want to get back into Magic the Gathering, and that's when I think it is going to be investable again. There are some niches, and that's what I hope to actually dive into. Now, this has been a very rambly video and not really talked much about the market, but on the Rogue Market channel, I do want to start getting back into looking at, like, cards that could go up in particular Commander decks or post-rotation Standard decks or Pioneer decks that are breaking out. But the problem is right now with Magic the Gathering, is why I feel that it's very volatile and not investable, is once again the whole change of focus of they would rather try to be a collectible than they would rather go into utility, where they're trying to say, okay, people want, but they're never going to have that sort of zeal for people wanting an Umbreon compared to, are there that many fanboys out there for like an Emrakul compared to something like is there someone out there that wants to collect every version of an Emrakul or just has an Emrakul pillow at their house? They don't have that. Magic is utility. People get excited over utility. Blinging out their deck is an afterthought. Magic needs to find its roots again. They need to go back to utility. They need to go back to what makes their game absolutely where people will go rabid over, getting particular cards. And it's not to say that Magic doesn't have these little niches here and there. It's just not so cut and dry. There are some kind of diamonds in the rough that have slipped through, but we're definitely not in a market, if we actually go over to like movers and shakers, if you look at Goldfish's movers and shakers, we're not in a market where it's hot across the board. It's just, little things here and there that are starting to go up, maybe in like a breakout deck. We're not seeing a very hot market through and through. And I mean, what is it really like? When I remember back during kind of the days, I say like War of the Spark, like Feather Redeemed Commander, that was one that we saw sales data that was very similar to something like this Battle Pass VIP, where, everyone was buying a particular uncommon that went into Feather. And it's just, we don't have that excitement anymore. It just seems like that the players aren't buying nearly as much, or at least, I don't know what's happening. I don't know what's going on with it. And that's, I think, a lot more to do with some of these prices that are going up. Like, we'll see some big prices shooting up. I think it's more on the fact that something slips through, and people just like a lot of people aren't even putting stuff up for sale because it's been so dismal. And so people have given up, and that's why we see some of these like low supply things actually go up in price. Like maybe this Kinsblade Slayer. I mean, there's probably a lot of these like out there, and it's just kind of slipped through there must be some knight that's being printed in Martian Machines that wants Double Strike, and so Kinsblade Slayer just went up for that. But anyway, that's kind of the where I kind of see the two extremes of how these companies have approached it. So again, kudos to Pokemon. Let's just take a look at them now that I'm excited about Pokemon. This is another breakout deck, by the way. So it's funny, I have a lot more experience in the past few weeks because I'm trying to figure out Pokemon for my player base here. But there was a Lightning deck that just broke out and wanted this card. And just look at this. I have not seen this for Pokemon, where it's just has pages full of $20 cards that are being sold in a few days for people actually buying cards for decks. And I said I'd touch briefly on all of these. On Flesh and Blood. Flesh and Blood, I'd caution everyone. It does have really, really good, let's pull up some Flesh and Blood here, movement. And we were seeing some, what I would say, like I said, organic. but I am starting to see a little bit of speculative movement. You can just tell once you get to the point of doing this for years, you can tell that some things are starting to become more speculative than they are just like actual real demand want to get back in, because there's a lot of things like rainbow foils that are people are doing buyouts for, and I don't know, maybe people are just trying to get ahead of things. That is the one interesting thing that Flesh and Blood has announced, that all of their reprints, they won't have foils and they won't have well, for now. That's what I always like to say that there's the very cynical look that I'm giving, that it's like, oh, they're never going to print this great library of Solana again in this rainbow foil until they need some money. Until it'll come to the point too, the player base will demand it and they'll deliver. But I mean, it's been the policy of Flesh and Blood that every reprint is just going to be a white bordered, boring version of the card rather than having a foil version. But the whole thing is, what I've seen a lot of the speculative market though is there's a lot of movement in like the Welcome to Wraith and like Crucible of World era, Arcane era of the rainbow foils, where usually people didn't really care about the rainbow foils. It was all about the cold foils or the first edition foils that actually moved up in price, and no one cared about unlimited rainbow foils. And now we've actually started seeing unlimited rainbow foils go up in value. However, through my experience with Flesh and Blood, is it also doesn't support that collectability that something like even Pokemon or Magic can do. And so I highly caution people that are going into like these foils, especially rainbow foils and cold foils. This is a highly utility game. The main people that actually play this game are people that are playing the game. They're not are buying the cards, are actually people that are playing the game. There isn't a lot of demand for some of these high-end cards for collectible reasons. I still think a lot of these cold foils, and what is this 200, maybe there's some utility to this particular card, but a bunch of these particular cards that might not see a lot of tournament results that are still going for a pretty penny, I would highly caution people from even delving in this sort of stuff. So like the card that I just showed from before, the this Command and Conquer is one as well. I know this is ultra rare. This is a particular card I know enough about Flesh and Blood that Command and Conquer is a very sought after card. Here's another thing too. There you go. There's a nice little reprint that they said, okay, reprints in the future aren't going to have any additional, they don't want to replace an older card with a better version of the card. Isn't this Command? Yeah, Command and Conquer was a card. I swear Command and Conquer was a card out of Welcome to Wraith? Anyway, I'm probably not making sense to anybody at this point. But yeah, so I highly caution people for getting back into a potential Flesh and Blood bubble, speculative bubble, just because we saw some decent growth and we saw again a company completely turn off the valves of the reprints and we're gonna tighten our belts and whatnot, and we're starting to see prices go back up. But yeah, just go with the utility is what I'm trying to say. Get the cards that are actually seeing tournament play, and don't focus on this stuff that is supposedly incredibly rare and highly collectible, because I am not sold on collectability. It's so volatile, it is so fickle, it is something I don't want to ever dip my toes into. And I'd like to hear some of your comments if you are in the Flesh and Blood market of what has actually been selling. I think the main thing too is you can kind of go by sales data. Look at these dismal sale data. Yeah, I mean, it takes you months and months to find one buyer of a price compared to what people put them up for. Yeah, I mean, these are going to come back down to earth. A lot of these ones that are, $300, $200 cars, they're probably not as rare in the scope of things. And the main problem with them too is there probably is a lot more of this sort of stuff out there of it's still in sealed product, or still people that just are refusing to even list or sell because they think that someday it's going to go up. $300 cards are something that are reserved for highly collectible Pokemon and highly collectible Magic cards. I'd very highly caution people from going in this sort of stuff. It's especially with the multiplier. I understand these cold foils are super rare compared to their normal versions, but if it is a utility based game, are people going to go? What's going to be more likely? The cold foil of a particular card that sees a lot of play going up because you find that one collector that wants to bling out their deck, or the comparatively speaking number of those cards would add that. So say maybe it has a 10x multiplier, buying the normal version and having it go up before this one goes up and maintains pace with that 10x multiplier. And that's been my the way I've done Magic this entire time. I've never really cared for a lot of the the foils and the collectible cards. Like now looking at like the Phyrexian oil slicks, for example. I'd rather have, like, if they have a 10x right now, I'd rather have 10 of the regular copies and sit on those long term than really sit on the one that is supposedly highly collectible. I think we are veering that in a market. I think that most of these card games are going to go back to utility. I think that Pokemon has proved that it's going to go back to utility. The games that are going to be successful are going to be the games that people are actually playing the game and using the cards for some sort of like I said, utility reason, rather than just putting them in sleeves or putting them in pages and whatnot and trying to sit on them as investment or a collectible for long term. So anyway, hope this made sense. Hopefully I wasn't too out there. Need to get back in the swing of things of actually doing videos and getting my thought process together. Again, I do want to get that Rogue Market channel. I'm going to pose this out there. How much would people mind if I actually did talk about collect the TCG market in general? You know, through the whole Pokemon, Flesh and Blood, even dabble in things like the White Schwartz, the Metazoos, the Lorcana is going to come out with Disney. We have One Piece that's super hot right now. We have Digimon. There's a lot of things that I've had to learn because I've had the demand of my locals and my patrons actually wanting this sort of stuff and figuring out that market. And I know that the Rogue Market is particularly focused on Magic the Gathering, but I think I could add some nice little content there as well to, you know, these other games. Or should I just keep going back to my roots, stick with Magic? I'm also thinking about this channel in particular, if maybe even, you know, showcasing some Pokemon's kind of fun to build rogue decks. So is Flesh and Blood. All those things are, I mean, I don't think you have, neither one of them has the flexibility that Magic does to really come up with a unique and you know, have all these, you know, wombo combo synergies that no one's found. Pokemon more so than Flesh and Blood, but there definitely is some areas I could explore on this channel if people are looking for other sort of content, and maybe even in the future to hit that Lorcana. One thing too, I really want to caution everyone about Lorcana. Oh my goodness, I've had so much demand for Lorcana. I'm talking, like, my patrons alone have put in for thousands of boxes that they want if I can get them. And I don't think I'm going to get near that amount because it does seem like, you know, Lorcana is testing the water of what the market, what they can bear. But this again is like, why are people losing their minds about a game that has very few previews, that just has an IP attached to it? We've seen some pretty terrible games come out of like the Star Wars or the Marvel. So just because it's got Disney attached to it, let's be a little bit cautious is all I'm saying about that sort of stuff. I'd rather miss out on like the being the first in the door if it does become an incredibly successful game, then constantly, you know, stub my toe being the first one in on things like Keyforge or things like Force of Will or things like Metazoo that just inevitably don't live up to the hype and crash. I mean, we've seen like all of these Magic killers that are going to come throughout the years. Magic is too big to fail at this point. It's got a massive player base. Yes, there is room for other, you know, TCGs to take some of that share away from them, but it's going to be very, very tough. It has to be like the most amazing game ever. And what are the chances of that? I mean, what are the odds that people are going to give Lorcana to be even, like, I'm just hoping it's a decent game. I hope it's a stomachable game to help actually keep the interests of certain people. It does have that massive IP behind it, but, I mean, they really have to come up with a banger to, you know, really compete with Magic or see this sort of demand that we're seeing now. And I think that also shows, though, I think that the demand for One Piece and Digimon and Pokemon and Flesh and Blood and now Lorcana is actually indicative of people just really upset with Magic the Gathering. And if I were Magic, I'd listen to this. I'd really listen to the market with all the money that should be in Magic moving elsewhere. So those are my thoughts. Again, not a lot of market related topic as far as Magic is concerned with cards and prices. I know a lot of people have been here for that sort of content before. We're going to take a look back at it. Again, we're done with the store. I just need to now remodel. If you've been keeping up with our Gone Rogue game channels, we did a remodel on the front part of our store, and it's just me and Zach. We don't have any other employees, so it's taken us, you know, a month to do it. But now I have this back room where I work, which I want to get up and running to where I can do videos and shoot and stuff, and then we'll start focusing on the content again. Appreciate everyone for sticking around. This has been Kevin with the Rogue Deck Builder. Thanks for watching.